Hi everyone, this slide is entitled Artery, Vein, and Nerve, and that's what you're seeing here. Right at the pointer is the artery, and again, this is the artery because it has a fairly round, wide open lumen and a fairly thick layer of smooth muscle and tunica media here. You can also see a very intensely staining internal elastic membrane right there. It's kind of a wavy layer of material just between the tunica media and the lumen. You can see on the left hand side a vein, and very clearly it's a very elongated structure, very much looking like it's collapsed, and it has a much thinner wall compared to the artery that I was just pointing to. And down below, and these three structures here are nerve bundles. So that's the nerves that we're looking at from the title of the slide. There's also another blood vessel right in between all these things, right in the middle of all this. And so again, based on the shape of the lumen and the thickness of the wall and the fact that you can still, even at this magnification, see that there's a fairly intensely stained internal elastic membrane, I can basically tell you right there that you're looking at an artery here as well. It's a relatively small artery compared to the other ones that we're seeing here. So let's take a look at this a little bit more detail. Maybe center the artery first, and we'll take a look at it at higher magnification. So we're going to move into 100x objective. Sorry, not 100x objective. 100x total magnification now. So here it is at 100x. So we're going to focus here, and so here we are. Again, the lumen, you can see it's filled with blood, so you can see a lot of red blood cells, and periodically you see nuclei. These are the leukocytes, the white blood cells. Now, if you look at just near the surface, you can see an internal elastic membrane. It's a very wavy dark band, and beneath that we see a layer of, or many layers rather, of smooth muscle. So this is a tunica media right here. Okay. Now, if you have to try to count all these layers of muscle, you probably would see about 20 to 30 layers of smooth muscle here. So it's a relatively large artery. It's not obviously an elastic artery, so this is a muscular artery, so probably would be classified as a medium-sized artery, but still relatively on relatively large size artery. Whereas this one down here, that's in between everything, again, still relatively thick layer of smooth muscle, but we're talking about maybe 5 to 10 layers of smooth muscle here. This will be classified as a small artery, but again, even in a small artery, you can very clearly see that internal elastic membrane, which, by the way, is much more difficult to see in this vein here. It does exist, but it's definitely not quite as prominent as it is in the arteries. So let's take a look at these in high magnification. Let's maybe center on the artery first and go to 400x. Okay, and so what we're seeing here is again that very obvious internal elastic membrane. Let me see if I can maybe increase the contrast a bit. That's not really working too well. Okay, so we can see an internal elastic membrane. Beneath that, we can see smooth muscle. Periodically, in between the layers of smooth muscle, you might notice a little bit of this wavy band of material that's more elastic fibers. So in this case here would be kind of remnants of some of the elastic fibers they would have seen in the larger arteries. Now out here at the end of the tunica media, what you see is another wavy band kind of starting off the tunica adventitia. So this outer boundary of the tunica media is where you would find the outer elastic membrane, or the external elastic membrane. And so again, this, from here to here, tunica media. From here outwards is tunica adventitia. And again, the tunica adventitia starts to merge with the tunica adventitia of the other vessel on the other side. So what you're seeing here is the vein in this case. And so again, the tunica media layer is relatively thin, has very few smooth muscle cells in it. So if you have to count these cells, you maybe find 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 layers of smooth muscle here, okay? And also there's a little bit more matrix material in between these muscle fibers. Whereas if you look at the artery here, the muscle fibers are very tightly packed together. Okay, now again, tunica adventitia, you can see a lot of staining in here. Part of that is just the presence of elastic fibers again. Okay, so that's what you're seeing here partially. If we zoom in or take a look at this tunica media here, again, if we were to count the number of cells here in the tunica media, you'd probably say maybe 8 to 10 layers of smooth muscle probably. That would be my estimate. And again, internal elastic membrane is very clearly visible even in a relatively small blood vessel like this small artery here. Now let's go back to the artery, the larger artery, and let me see if I can show you the tunica intima here in a little bit more detail. You can see on the surface of this internal elastic membrane, you do see some endothelial cells. Just trying to find a region where you can see some endothelial connective tissue, but I'm not really seeing it right now. Let me see if I can find a region where it's a little bit more obvious. Okay, I guess here's probably your best bet. So right there at the tip of the pointer, let's try to get this phone to, okay. There's an endothelial cell right there, and just underneath that is a bit of connective tissue before you get to the internal elastic membrane. Let me see if we can get a little bit more detail from the 100x objective. So let's switch over, try to find this area again. Unfortunately, I did not bring any oil with me, so I'm going to have to make do with just playing around with the contrast a little bit. Okay. Here it is right there. Okay. So this is the cell I was pointing to earlier. So right there is the, too far. The nucleus is visible here. Oh, that's the endothelium. Just to the left of that would be subendothelial connective tissue, and then beneath that is the internal elastic membrane. Okay, so that'll be that for this slide here.